Anyway, we're ready to roll. We're recording, so I'll just restart my introduction. This is Darya, and as many of you know, I'm transitioning into my new role of CEO of VMS Software at the moment. The official handoff is in June, but I have been slowly taking over the responsibilities from Dave since January, so I'll be your host today. And we have a very exciting agenda ahead of us today. So we'll start with me. I will present our main news and plans for later this year, as well as the results of our recent backup survey that we did with our customers and partners. Then Bill Smoldt of STORserver will talk about their backup solution that they have been porting to x86. And we'll finish with a Q&A session. So feel free to send your questions to VMS Software or to STORserver via the chat. Okay, and the recording and the slides will be available later this week. We'll make an announcement. Okay, so ready to go. We'll start with our news. I'll try to be brief, and everything we do is directed by our mission, which is to provide open VMS users with an opportunity to protect and realize the full value of their application investments. And in 2024, with hardware support running out for integrity servers, what this actually means for us is to support customers in moving their applications and their environments to x86. So how do we do that? In three main ways: by providing the operating system and the layered products that our customers will use on x86, by making it easier to work with us as a company, and by actively helping customers move their environments and applications. So on this slide, you can see three main objectives that we have at VMS Software and our initiatives supporting each objective. The ones in blue are either done or started, rolling. For instance, we've established the product organization, and if you've seen the recent update, Camille Vanderhoeven is now responsible for the operating system for OpenVMS, and a number of product managers are responsible for layered products. And they're actively working with sales on updating our product portfolio to fit our customers' needs. We are also working with customers to figure out what third-party solutions they need to be running on x86, and we're then engaging with the solution providers to port their solutions to x86, and we're providing the necessary support and guidance to them. And you will see the results of this work within the hour. We have streamlined our quoting and fulfillment process. So now it takes on average about 5 days to deliver licenses to the customers for the most recent orders. We have received many complaints on our roadmap not being updated on time. So we have decided to connect our website to Jira, which is the software we use for project management, so that you can see in real time what's in our pipeline and the updates are delivered in real time. So let me just quickly exit this presentation and I will show you what this looks like. This is our test server, because this update itself is in the pipeline, but it has already been vetted and we are releasing it later this week. So you can see that Update 1 was released in March. We've sent you an email about that. Version 9.2-3 is being released in December, and you can see what it has in it, and there are some comments, and there's a bunch of other products as well that are getting released later this year. And you can also see the spoilers for more information. So there's that. And we have also established a CVE program, or rather a CVE submission process. So you can actually submit a CVE report in a secure way. You can submit vulnerabilities to us in a secure way. And we'll keep working on that process. So stay tuned for updates there. And let me get back to my presentation here. Okay, Now, following many questions from customers, we have gathered all of our x86 migration advice in one place, and we've released migration.vmssoftware.com, which is a landing page where you can access all of our migration checklists, all of the architectural differences that you need to consider when moving to x86, all of the release notes, and everything else that you need to start porting your environment to x86. And I have to exit again to show you guys what this looks like. So you can see our migration advice here. There's a bunch of links to all sorts of resources to help you with that. Okay. And then we have also established an application services organization led by Brett Cameron, and a professional services organization led by Raphael Martins, who is joining us in June and will be ramping up their operations to respond to the growing number of migration requests that are coming from customers. We're doing discovery services with customers to understand what they need to migrate to x86 and to provide estimates to them. And that also feeds into the product organization so that we make sure that the customers have what they need on x86. So all in all, a lot of progress here. In particular, in the first quarter of this year, we've released a lot of bug fixes for OpenVMS in version 9.2-2 update 1, and almost all of the native compilers are released, networking tools, quite a few open source products, and like I said, commercial license fulfillment time is faster than ever. Camille is now in charge of OpenVMS, and he will be talking more to you about it. In fact, just today, we released a YouTube video with Camille explaining how to get rid of the jitter that some customers are experiencing in their ESXi VMs running OpenVMS. And I've already gone over a few things on that slide that we did. So I'll just mention the ambassador program. We got many requests. Thank you very much. And we know some of you are with us today. And we're finally on top of all those requests. And we're working on providing the licenses and planning our first ambassador events as we speak. Now, we also have quite a few exciting changes and challenges ahead of us. Though OpenVMS version 9.2-3 is only planned for December, there are a few very important features in it that are ready and that we could release earlier. We don't have to wait for 9.2-3, namely the Acme agent and the hypervisor guest console. So the Acme agent can be released in an update kit, but the hypervisor guest console cannot. So we are internally discussing if we should maybe release a version of OpenVMS earlier and then release version 9.2-4 in December with the rest of the changes. Regardless, I think that the hypervisor guest console will be a game changer, because that basically means that you don't have to set up a serial port in your VM. You can just use the built-in VM console to install OpenVMS, and that makes the process so much faster and so much easier. We're also planning to release BASIC, which is our last native compiler. So the whole set of native compilers will be available, and that is in field test at the moment. In June and July, we will be holding a large instructor-led training session, including Fundamental System Management 1 and System Management 2. So there will be some updates on that. And if you need someone trained, then stay tuned. And we are on track to get HITRUST certified in June, July this year as well. And I know that this is very important to many of our customers. Finally, and it's not on this slide, we are continuing to actively reshape our product organization with Camille and with our product managers. And for instance, we've just done a backup survey to find out the backup needs of our customers. And we got close to 100 submissions. And the range of environments and the awareness people have of their environments is quite broad, as you can see on the slide. But we found that the backup needs are actually quite extensive. So this is the summary of what we got. 31% of the respondents have highly active databases. The downtime window is quite low. For 30% of our customers, it's 0, so no downtime. For 23%, it's minutes. The majority of our respondents need encryption, complicated rules for saving different kinds of data, and I don't even mention incremental backups. They have to be there. 18% need to back up to tapes, 20% mention cloud backups. So yeah, that is quite extensive. Here are the backup solutions used by our customers. So this is just the list with everything that people mentioned. No numbers. The majority uses just backup, so the solution that OpenVMS has by default. And the ones in bold are the solutions that have been ported or are being ported to x86 at the moment. Now, while we are in a pretty good shape here with a lot of variety, we might still be missing some important features requested by customers, such as incremental backups. There is a trend toward platform agnostic solutions. So as you can see Veeam here, that's not an OpenVMS product. It's a client for a platform agnostic product, which Veeam is. And it's great because it works for all platforms. You can back up on Linux, you can back up on Windows, you can back up on OpenVMS. However, at the moment, they do not provide incremental backups. They can just back up the whole thing, but that is planned. And another platform agnostic solution is from STORserver. And we have invited them to speak about it today. So please join me in welcoming Bill Smoldt, the president of STORserver. And I will stop sharing my screen and I will make Bill host so he can share his. So there we go. Oh, look at that, it's been 13 minutes. Bill, you are on mute.
And of course I am. Thank you very much, Darya. I'll take just a moment to figure this out, and it looks like I can find the screen. Okay, I'm presuming you can see my first presentation screen here. Yep. I'm going to go through that in just a moment. Just a little bit about myself. I started my computing career in the Marine Corps on second-generation computers. We had the world's first portable computer, which we could load on semis and a C-130, fly it anywhere in the world, drop it on a beach, and run it off of batteries and 3 diesel generators indefinitely. It was not a small system, but it was definitely portable. Not quite as nice as not quite as easy to carry around as the first Osborne portable computer. And then after joining digital, shortly after a short stint with NCR, I started working on PDP-8s. We had some of the large typesetting PDP-8s, and I was one of the few digital employees to go straight from a PDP-8 to VAX conversion course. And while I was there in 1978, it's when I started working, got my first introduction to VAX and VMS version 0.99. So that was the last beta version. That's how old I am. I'm older than VMS. This isn't the picture of my first VAX 11780, but it looked much like that. Let's see if I can find my... I apologize. I'm not terribly familiar with Zoom here. On this VAX 11780, the day it got here, I had a sign on the outside on the cardboard box that said forklift here. And the forklift driver did exactly that. So we ran that 11780 without front doors for about 3 or 4 months until we finally got some doors from manufacturing. That wasn't easy to do because they were kicking out 780s very fast. And that was serial number 612 in Boeing. And from then on, I've been involved in VMS or disk controllers. I was with Digital for 17 years and worked at the RDC, the cluster support team, and the disk controller engineering and educational services in Colorado Springs for quite some time. Then after that, I was one of the original members of the storage management group that some of you may be familiar with. It was initially called AIM back in 1989 when we started that. And some of you may remember the MSIMs we used to hold in Austria once a year. So although I'm really here to talk about just the evolution of backup from that beginning, since I was there, I want to emphasize that and emphasize my appreciation for the dedication everyone in VMS engineering has taken to the file system, the data integrity of the file system over the years. That's been such an important part of VMS. And I want to thank VSI for continuing that careful tradition of data integrity in the file system and all the utilities. Every once in a while, I have this reflection of what would have happened if we would have won those operating system wars back in the early, in the 80s and the early 90s, and VMS had become the predominant operating system. We just wouldn't have had the viruses, the Trojan horses, all of the things that are going on now. We would have had some. We'd have had some ransomware. There'd be some. It wouldn't have been as much, certainly, but we certainly wouldn't have had these source chain supply issues that are going on now. VMS, the closed aspect of VMS was very nice in avoiding some of those things. So I wish that would have happened. It didn't. However, we still have VMS around. And the integrity of the VMS file system has just been sacred, and backup is one of the utilities that is critical to the integrity when something does go wrong with the file system. We have to do restores. We all know and respect the care that Andy Goldstein and the other VMS engineers put into backup over the years. That's just been phenomenal, and it's wonderful to be where we're at because of that. Now, let me see if I can turn that pointer off. Yes. Sorry, still learning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of backup, the challenges going outside the box in the future. But first, I want to introduce the person whom I worked with for many years in digital, and who has created quite a few of the digital file system utilities and products that go along with that. Steve and I are co-founders of STORserver, and he's our VP of engineering. Steve worked, and many of you have probably had contact with him over the years. The first product he worked on was the striping driver, which is now known throughout the industry as RAID 0. RAID 0 is a term that I coined when I was trying to explain what striping was to Tom Bernice in Colorado Springs one day, and he just couldn't understand it. So he said he kept asking what level it was because he had to write the marketing materials, and I finally said it's RAID nothing, it's RAID 0. So he took out a full-page ad in Digital News and Review, and RAID 0 was born from that point on, with one of those Digital Has It Now ads. One of the few marketing things we ever did, although our engineering group refused to call it RAID 0 because it isn't RAID. Steve also was instrumental in creating the at the time, Digital File Optimizer. It's really a defragmenter. VSI still has that product, and that's the old marketing thing that Louis Proxmire came up with for depicting DFO. Of course, at that time we were having worked at the cluster support team in Colorado Springs. We had many mysterious crashes that we couldn't directly attribute to, but had remnants of problems from DiskKeeper. So DiskKeeper was a fine product, and that company made a lot of money off of that product. It was an essential product, but we decided, of course, in digital we had to we need to do it, and there was one essential missing piece called the move file operation primitive, that we needed to ensure that any time a file was going to be moved, we didn't have anything happening in between. So Steve was instrumental in getting that from VMS Engineering. In fact, one year at IMSIM, we had to kidnap Ralph Weber and hold him until VMS Engineering would finish the move file operation. And Ralph finally did that. Andy Goldstein was involved in that too. And then Steve also worked on what at the time was called the shelving product. And this is a critical one. This one actually extends the VMS file system outside onto tape drives, because it moves the data onto nearline storage. And Steve, originally that was, like I said, shelving, but like all of our products, we had to go through all the renaming process and rewriting all of the products, all of the documentation to reflect the Polycenter label, because at the time we were trying to compete with Unicenter from Computer Associates. So those are just some of the things that went on inside of our storage management group during some of those years. I personally started working and going to customer sites because we already owned a SLS in digital. We decided to turn that into a profitable product, because we were actually trying to make money enough that our group wouldn't get canceled, which happened eventually anyway. So I really want to talk about the history of backup itself, kind of just for fun, because some of you know this much better than I do, and others haven't been through this. But actually, originally, VMS Backup did not exist in that version I first started working on. In fact, it didn't exist until somewhere in the version 2 timeframe, one of the doc releases. And at that point, we were actually using the monitor call routine to an RSX utility called Brew. Now, I went back for fun and compared the commands in RSX Brew, which was backup restore utility, to current VMS Backup, and an awful lot of those are identical. I thought that was the first instance of it, but then I actually found out during that research that Brew was originally written on a PDP-15 and then ported to RSX. So a nice little bit of trivia there for you that's totally worth nothing. The VMS Backup utility, which Andy worked on extensively throughout the years, came out around, I think it was version 2.2, and I'm sure everybody on the line has used VMS Backup for many years. Commands I'm sure are quite familiar to you. The standalone backup utility was critical in those early years, and still, even today, the recommended way to back up a cluster system disk is shut everything down, use standalone backup on it, although we can get around those. That's still the only supported method of doing that. Again, remember our insistence on data integrity throughout all of this. There was a little product called Backup Manager, just kind of a command line driven thing that tried to make everything easier, because things were getting hard as we kept growing. When we first started, and we didn't have much for storage, we had 176 megabyte RPO 6 drives at that point. It wasn't nearly as hard as when we really grew VMS into going head to head with IBM and becoming major data center systems. And so we needed more and more. And as we went on, Digital came out with the storage library system. I'll talk more about that. And there's a product that still VSI still has out there called Save Set Manager to make backups easier. And that one does some nifty things like merge incrementals into full backups. And then our storage management group went on to introduce what was called at the time ABS. In fact, the first product we wrote was MDMS, the Media and Device Manager Services. And we had a very nice and fancy architecture around that and around all the archive and backup that we're doing. It was very architecturally driven, as we try to do in digital. And we had a beautiful architecture for a brand new file system that was going to replace all file systems in the world. And that remained an architecture. We never did actually get that implemented before the group was turned into something else. So, and then VSI still has that product called VSI Archive Backup System. For a while, it was also the Polycenter something. I don't think it was Polycenter Archive Backup or something like that. And then along the way, we had to worry about the changes in disk structure, ODS 1.2.5, Spiralog, and of course, Files 11 presents some unique opportunities in locking and things like that. And then people started building their databases on RMS and doing some other things. We've got this thing in VMS called file versioning that is just fantastic. And we just took that for granted so early until we all had to go off and work on PCs and they didn't have file versioning. And then we all, I'm sure, have lost files because we got used to it in the first place. But each file, each version of a file is actually a unique file, and it's the file system utilities that give us a view of relating those together. But the thing that really hurt in backup are those in-place updates. And I noticed on that survey, that's one of those things. If so many customers created their own databases on file systems, and that became problematic in that we had to somehow get those backed up without having the necessary utilities that we might like to have in a file system in order to do that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I already mentioned how creating a bootable system disk is hard, but we have ways around that. All of you have worked out ways to do that, and we of course have that in our products too. We started doing backups over DECnet, and then all the other databases required special utilities, RDMS, RDB, digital standard mumps on VMS. Native mumps was something else entirely and difficult. And then of course clusters came to being around version 4, and that created even more challenges. So, but now we're getting into the problems with backup itself. In this environment, it certainly wasn't easy to use. And then we came out with all sorts of new tapes, and we went through, many of you probably went through the 8mm tape drives that were really fantastically cheap and worked very well until the heads wore out, and then they didn't work at all. And we lost a lot of data on 8mm. Then we had 4mm DATs and finally DLTs. But then a lot of loaders and robots, and trying to track all of that with all the media and files and the backup save sets and make certain that everything was good. But so many sites had created their own elaborate command file backup utilities where they did their own tracking, and so that became problematic. Those there are some amazingly wonderful products out there that I've seen at customer sites for doing this kind of tracking, and that's very good as long as the administrator, the backup administrator that wrote those, is still at the site. The real problem we had is that typically it was written by a very senior administrator, and the person who is responsible typically, and this is not just at VMS sites, I find this at all sites, the person who typically gets responsibility for backups is the brand new system administrator or the ones that's about to be fired. So those become problematic in that person trying to maintain an elaborate command file system that somebody else wrote. Then we've got some other things in there. I already mentioned some of those. Of course, we all want to be able to back up the cloud, and I'll show you how we do that. All of this, we have to do these things without having an impact on production. And all the way along here, data just kept exploding and getting bigger and bigger. It's amazing some of the systems we work on today. Many of you will recognize the original RPO6s that we got with our VMS systems. We had the RMO3s and RMO5s back then, and it was very easy to do a disk-to-disk backup. You just pop the cartridge out, pop in a scratch disk, back up your all of your data disks going disk to disk, and put them back on the shelf. Of course, many of you have been through the same thing I went through, where the operator, as soon as something happened, would put the backup in and crash after the heads had already crashed on the original disk, and take the disk-to-disk backup out at the same time. Then we tried other things like merging and breaking merging shadow sets with mirrors. I mentioned the save set merge. I don't think a lot of people use that save set merge in the save set manager, but there may have been some of you. And then breaking or creating snapshots on storage arrays, or even breaking mirrors there are the way a lot of you address some of these speed issues that I was just mentioning. But then there's a growth, and as you can see on the right, this is what our little computer room looked like. Our extra van, we had a van completely full of reel-to-reel tapes, and those presented a problem of their own, not just in tracking, but this is another area I'd like to give a shout out for VMS backup and what was put in that. On those reel-to-reel tapes, they were inherently unreliable, of course. I remember doing one conversion product, moving those off to cartridge tapes, where I had one shot at getting the data off of it, because the oxide would wipe off on the heads while we were reading the tape. There was not a second pass, and VMS backup was incredible at that, at recovering from errors with the ECC and the CRCs and the error correction codes that were a part of that. So we were able to use those even with the unreliability. Now, we just don't have that same unreliability today, but at the time, the way that VMS backup wrote save sets on tape was very important. And then, of course, we got into severe disaster recovery as VMS got further and further into the being the most important aspect of handling business data, and became the mainstream IT department in companies. Then disaster recovery became critical, and then we got into situations where we had to coexist with other operating systems, and the corporation might have a disaster recovery strategy, even a product they wanted to use, and so compliance with that became more and more difficult. So all of that just to get to VMS backup was no longer sufficient for doing backups. Of course, Digital's, as I already mentioned, Digital's first take at that was buying a version of System Partners at the time, Software Partners 32 now, TapeSys product, which ran the RV64. You can see a picture of that RV64. Many of you saw that at DECUS, because we used to carry that sucker around to every DECUS for years. And it was a fantastic worm product, and great for archiving, but that was the reason Digital originally bought SLS, which was our name for it. But then we discovered we could use that entirely for managing all backups, and that became our major offering, while the storage management group was writing Polycenter Archive Backup, or ABS, as it is today, in MDMS. So again, just a little history of that. We were afraid at that point that Computer Associates was going to take over the world. They didn't. They sold to Broadcom in 2018, and I don't think those products exist anymore. But they did have a good backup product for VMS. And then around 1995, IBM had asked Digital to write a backup client for their new product, which in fact was was ADSM and then Tivoli Storage Manager at the time. And I noticed that many of you are using our product. That's based on that the server we write with a archive backup client goes to Tivoli Storage Manager. So more about that in just a little bit. And then Legato Networker has a client server, Commvault, HP Data Protector. The important part is which ones of these are going to go forward on the x86 platform. And I'll give you a little bit more about that too. I was just looking over the list that some of you responded to in the survey, and there's some of those, well, I know most of them except a couple of them, so I'd like to know more about some of those that I don't have listed. Okay, so now I get to the shameless marketing plug. I've got to do this. We began life primarily consulting on SLS while we were writing the archive backup client for TSM. But we quickly, and that was in 1995 when we first spun out as Storage Solutions Specialist. Then we reincorporated as a STORserver and grew into a complete suite of appliances. And we don't just back up VMS, we back up any operating system. We sell appliances through our business partners, and we provide a complete array of appliances. One specifically for VMS, but a complete array of appliances that we back up for customers all around the world. Here's a list of our products that are specifically focused on the VMS market and the STORserver archive backup client. We just call it ABC for Open VMS. It's been kind of nice to just say VMS instead of Open VMS lately. We also have a STORserver virtual machine backup. Now the client, the ABC, is an in-guest client, so that runs on Open VMS, and it looks the command syntax for that is very close to backup. In fact, most of you can just put ABC in front of your existing backup scripts that are scheduled, and they will run. And they may take some slight modifications, but that's all it takes once you install this client. Extremely easy to use. It's intuitive for VMS administrators. And the fun things we do, I'll talk about in just a minute, because we do a lot of munging with the data on the other side of that. The STORserver virtual machine backup is very exciting for the x86 VMS, because that one actually does the backup of snapshots at the VMware level using VADP to the APIs from VMware to take the data out at a block level. On the first product, the in-guest client, ABC, it is a progressive incremental forever, which means that you do the first incremental, which is actually a full because it's never seen those backups before, those files before. And another important aspect is that we don't depend on the backup bit in the file header to track things. We have a separate database that keeps track of every file that's been backed up. And we know exactly all the attributes for all of that and can faithfully and completely restore any file. But because we have that outside, and because of the way this product works, we do incrementals forever. That is, we may have a file that was backed up 10 years ago on one of our appliances, and it never gets backed up again, as long as it doesn't change. And of course, that applies to each file version. We have policies that take care of getting rid of the old data too. The output format is different. It's not VMS backup. We're taking all the data and deduplicating it and compressing it and deduplicating it with all other operating systems if we have other operating systems on that also. So we do a lot on the back end to reduce the amount of data that we need for backing up lots of data, but then we can faithfully restore anything. We effectively have a full backup every day that we can do a full backup of any file system. And then the virtual machine backup that is going to be working with x86 will actually take VM data at a block level. So it does progressive incremental at a block level. We only get changed blocks from VMware, and then we put that in the same data repositories that we use for the archive backup client and deduplicate it along with that. So we only back up the changed blocks, which means we're moving less and less data. And that also means that the snapshot that we take has to be in place for a much shorter period of time. So that doesn't require, the downtime becomes less and less as we get more advanced with this. We also have a store server data protection for Oracle RDB and a store server backup appliance just for VMS, for those of you who don't want to mix your other data in with that. So here's a little bit more about ABC. I see that I'm running out of time, which I always do. I was going to talk a little bit about the data flow in here, but these are just some of the features. I'll let you go ahead and pick out what you want from that. I would encourage you to contact us if you want to know more about this and see how we handle backup of VMS and of x86 backup today. Now, this client is running today in x86, and so we can do these backups today simply by putting our client in the x86, and we have the Oracle RDB client in-host client for that also. I already went through most of the things that we're going to talk about on the VMB product, and we can do in conjunction, and this isn't in place yet for x86 VMS, but we can on other operating systems. We can do in conjunction with TSM for VE. We can do instant restores of virtual machines. That means that we just send the metadata of a virtual machine to VMware, and that sets up everything on the ESXi server, but we do an iSCSI connection back to our product and to our appliance, and all of the data stays on our appliance, but the virtual machine runs immediately, and then we can use vMotion to vMotion that back into the disk storage if that's going to be a permanent virtual machine. Fascinating stuff. Again, I'd encourage you to read up on that and contact us for more information. It's going to get more fun from here on out, and easier. Here's just a quick picture of our primary appliance. We'll back up something like 40 different operating systems, and all of the data that can come from any of those products all gets put into storage pools. We send it off to a DR location, or we can send that directly to S3 storage in the cloud. Typically, we'll have a virtual appliance in a cloud, and we'll be able to do things like, one of the really nice things is that if the primary appliance were to go down, we're able to do backups and restores directly out of our virtual machine in the cloud, even with the primary appliance down. So we've got some really nice failover built in there. So that's enough about my shameless pitch for our products. In the future, we're going to continue to develop these products. We've got a lot more planned. We have other things planned from the future. You'll need to contact your vendor if you have plans for moving to x86 onto whether and how they're going to support the x86 platform. But we will be quickly developing new ways of doing that going forward. Now, the IBM Storage Defender, this is going to work with that, and we're working with Rubik, and we will be looking at Cohesity. I noticed that was one of the products that you're going forward. One of the reasons for this is that we also, backup is becoming quickly a part of cyber defense. So these products all have the capability of quickly identifying a cyber attack and then using the backup products to do the restore automatically. So as I said, that this whole aspect of backup gets more exciting as we go along. And I need to wrap this up, I think. This is our total package that we sell. If you would like any more information on that, please contact Jeff, who will get you all of the information you need. And I'll make sure that anybody that wants gets a copy of this presentation also. Okay, I need to stop.
Thank you, Bill.
And give you back host. There we go.
Okay, thank you. All right. I can see recording paused. Are we going to resume for questions, or is it recording?
It's still recording, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there were a few questions. Thank you for that. I will address the questions both in the Q&A and in the chat. And I'll try to go in order of appearance, but I'm not sure it's going to be that. So Dirk Kruger is asking if the future of OpenVMS is only on x86 and is the development of traditional CPUs on hold. If by traditional CPUs you mean bare metal, then there is some interest from the customers. However, for now, there is no solid business case for it. So when there is one, then we're happy to commit to developing a bare metal solution. However, for now, because there is no solid business case, we cannot commit to that at the moment. Okay, James Preciado is asking about the consolidated backup utility. Hang on, let me just find. When will we see a consolidated backup utility that can handle x86 integrity and alpha system disk backups? Now, as far as I understand, the backup utility on integrity can back up the integrity system disk. On alpha, it can back up the alpha system disk, and on x86, it can back up the system disk as well. Now, I'm not a product manager, so I might be wrong, but as far as I know, the backup utility is used for creating backups and restoring backups on the same architecture. So that part works. However, if you mean managing backups, then that is not likely to become the functionality of backup. We will be developing ABS though, and that might be the functionality of ABS. If you mean creating a backup of, say, an alpha system disk and restoring that on x86, I see a bunch of difficulties there that are not related to backup per se, but just to the difference between the architectures. So I am not sure what you mean. Simon Jackson is asking about IBM TSM. I don't think anybody mentioned it in the survey. However, you've explained that this is ABS. And I think STORserver has already replied that they ported ABS. Sorry, not ABS, ABC.
It's all these acronyms. Yes, ABC has been ported to x86. That's correct.
Yeah. So I think that part is resolved. And Simon Jackson also asked a question about LSE, whether LSE will be released, the language sensitive editor will be released in the next version of DECset. And that's a yes. We are releasing DECset version 13.0-2 in May, and LSE version 5.3 something will be included, 5.3-3. will be included in that release. So it's in May. We'll send that out an announcement when that's ready. Yeah, and then I'm sorry, you've all shared many of your first hardware memories that you started working with, and there was an extensive discussion of ABS. Okay. Yeah, Richie McGladdery is asking whether VSI have a strategic vision to expand beyond the long-standing user base of OpenVMS. To which I say that VSI has a strategic vision to bring existing user base to x86. That is a massive task for us as a company, and we will need more resources just to accomplish that task. There are many companies out there that use VMS, but that don't even know that we exist, to be honest. So before we bring new users to OpenVMS, we must bring the existing users to x86 and all those companies that use OpenVMS but don't have contracts with us. So that is our strategic vision. Okay. James Preciado was also asking what we are considering or envisioning for the ambassador event. And for now, so the first ambassador event is just going to be a panel type conference call where we will ask some questions to the ambassadors, and the ambassadors will ask some questions to us. And when I say we, I will be there, and Camille will probably be there, and it's likely that a salesperson will be there as well. So yeah, just a panel type discussion, and one of the questions can be actually what do you see ambassador work like, and what you see these events like? How can we be useful to you as an ambassador, and how you can continue working for OpenVMS? All right. I think I have covered all of the VMS questions, I think. Okay, Gerard is just asking how can be defined a good business case. Yes, so a good business case means an actual customer who is actually planning to move if we provide a bare metal environment. And how large is the installation, how much are we going to make there, because we are spending our resources to develop bare metal capabilities. That is a considerable amount of resources, and if they don't pay off, we're not going to exist as a company several years into the future. That's unsustainable. So that is a good business case. Ed Boer is asking if VSI is a publicly traded company. No. VMS Software belongs to TerraCloud. Okay. I think I've covered all of the question. I'm very sorry if I didn't cover your question. Please let me know. But there was a question for Bill that I don't think was answered by Mauricio. Oh wait, who's that? Does ABC VMS Backup Solution support Media Agent? Did you guys answer that?
Oh, I think Steve
yeah, I
answered.
did. It does not at this time.
Okay.
Well, thank you for taking care of all of those questions in the chat, Steve, and thanks for all the questions too.
Yep. Thank you. So Gerard is asking, and a potential business case worked in collaboration with partners. I am not quite sure what you mean there, Gerard. Okay, I see some regrets on the bare metal news. And I encourage you guys to reach out to us and talk about the customers that you have that would be, moving off if we don't provide bare metal support, because we can discuss bare metal support. We are open to it. It's just that when I say we don't have enough of a business case, we don't know who the customers are. The customers that we are talking to do not need bare metal. Seriously. So if you can talk to us, we can discuss it. Okay. Okay, then I'll just close the question with Gerard. He says, if a partner takes initiative and BSI just helps and a potential becomes a real, yes. I mean, sure. Let's discuss that. If you have a customer who needs bare metal, we can work on a business case together. We'll tell you what kind of information we need. Okay. So there is some discussion, but I don't see any more questions. So if I haven't covered a question, I'm really sorry. That's just because I was on top of the questions until I started responding to them. So if you need more explanation or have additional questions, I encourage you to reach out to us through one of their website forums or by email, and we'll continue answering your questions. And we'll circulate the slides and the recording later this week. Thank you.